I'll just be clear that we're not directly involved, but we are proud to support a number of organizations. We raise money here to send to organizations such as the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, who are one of the lead petitioners before the High Court at the moment on this matter of the reasonableness clause. This is an attack on the judiciary, which is fundamentally different from the judiciary and the role that it plays in the Australian system, because unlike Australia, Israel has no upper house and it has no written constitution. Thus, forms like the reasonableness doctrine are critical for ensuring that liberal democratic values are safeguarded. It's a critical check and balance, and we're proud to support organizations who are fighting to uphold it as a part of the government in Israel.
Yeah. How significant is it, and why have all 15 justices convened for these challenges?
It's unprecedented. There's never been a sitting of all 15 justices at the same time. And indeed, the Chief Justice, Esther Chayot, has convened everyone because she's due to retire before January 16th. And she wants everyone to hear the case together so there can be no concerns of impropriety or politicization for what is a fairly significant matter. It's a significant matter because it goes to the core of the protections of what are reasonable decisions made by the executive in Israeli government. And so that's why we're proud to support organizations like ACRI who are petitioning the court to ensure that the reasonableness doctrine stays in place.
It is such an unusual circumstance where, in fact, the court is really hearing a case for its own existence, for its own rights and protections, as you point out, for laws passed in Israel. So what sort of arguments are we expected to hear? How long is this going to go on for?
It's quite peculiar. We've already been hearing arguments coming from, as I said, there are more than 30, there are 38 petitioners in support alongside ACRI, working to make sure that the reasonableness doctrine is restored. And so we're hearing a range of arguments both from them and from the government who have sought to legislate against this reasonableness doctrine. We will be continuing to hear these arguments for as long as it takes for the case to be borne out. That could be as soon as in the coming weeks, though it must be done before January 16th, when Esther Chayot, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, is due to step down.
And do you expect them to deliver their deliberations before that time?
Yes, indeed, they'll have to, and it could go any which way. It could precipitate a constitutional crisis, as we are in uncharted waters, or it could be that the Supreme Court determines that ultimately it's going to leave the law exactly as it is in place, and any permutation between those two extremes could eventuate. What we know is that we're in uncharted waters, that we really need people from the international community to step up and to call for a restoration of the liberal democratic values that preceded the far-right Netanyahu government. And that's why I'm proud to work with the New Israel Fund to support organizations who are doing just that every day on the front lines in Israel.
I was interested to hear, Michael, that even Australian the Australian Jewish community is very alarmed. Normally very strong supporters of Israel and governments of Israel are very alarmed at what the Netanyahu government is doing.
That's exactly right. I mean, I am a proud Australian Jew, and I was raised with the notion of Israel as something which was a proud place to look towards for liberal democratic values. It's something that underscores the connection between Australia and Israel as long-standing allies. However, just as one would pull in a friend when they don't believe that they're acting in accordance with their true friendship, so too it's the time of the Australian government and indeed the international community to call Israel to rectify its behavior. This is a dramatic slide to the extreme right, where Netanyahu has gotten into bed with some truly ugly characters who are deemed, in fact, too dangerous to even serve in the Israeli military. And so there's a role for us to play in saying this is out of step with our Jewish values. It's certainly out of step with my Jewish values, and I want to see a change in the country.
Many, of course, point to the fact that it's Benjamin Netanyahu in a fight not only for his political survival, but potentially to stay out of jail. He's the one that might be persuaded by international powers, particularly the United States. He doesn't seem to be there for turning, though.
That's exactly right. I mean, this is, as I said, unprecedented. Netanyahu, we know, likes to be in the kind of middle of the political spectrum where he forms a coalition. he is now representing the furthest left wing of his coalition. He previously served with Likud, a party that ruled out ever sitting with these extremist Kahanist parties that are now in his own government. And so it's clearly a marriage of convenience, because it's hard to say that his politics have evolved so rapidly and so significantly to the right. And so we do welcome the criticism from the American government. Such criticism has come forth from the British, the Canadian, and even the Australian government. And we'd welcome that pressure, because this is not something that we want to see in the region. It's not good for peace, and it's not good for liberal democratic values.
Yeah. Michael, should the Supreme Court decide to leave the law as it is, are there any other ways around it?
Yeah, there's any number of ways this could go. In 2018, when they ruled on the matter of the nation-state laws, they kind of narrowed the focus so that it applied, but not exactly to Israeli citizens in the way that it had been described. They could do something similar to that, where they rule that they're not going to interfere with the law, but they could be quite precise in who it applies to or under what circumstances it applies. And so if they provide something like that, it may indeed avert a constitutional crisis where public servants aren't forced to choose between who to follow, the courts or the government. But it could constrain the narrowness with which this law is applied. And perhaps that will be the way that this broad panel of 15 judges determines that there's the least harm done to the society.
Yeah, fascinating to watch. We'll be keeping a close eye on it. Good to have you on. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.